This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
I would say the AFC playoff picture is taking shape right now, but honestly, it's a very weird picture because there are 6 separate teams that are plus 310 and between plus 310 and even money to make the AFC playoffs right now. So a lot still left to be decided, including deciding whether or not Jake Browning can actually lead the Bengals on a playoff surge minus Joe Burrow. We're going to break down that today with Ryan Williams talking about that AFC playoff race, where he sees some value in FanDuel Sportsbook, which teams he's not buying into, and then taking a look at the Week 15 spreads, totals, and money lines and outlining where my models show value for this week. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Tuesday by Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. And Ryan, interesting games last night. Big comeback for the Tennessee Titans. The New York Giants, led by Tommy DeVito, coming through once again. So 2 big upsets. How are you doing today?
Tommy DeVito, don't forget the D. He had some magic there late in the fourth quarter, looking like Tom Brady, looking like Patrick Mahomes running a 2-minute drill against the Green Bay Packers defense. So wild one. I know we had some great hits yesterday on Covering the Spread, but definitely did not see the Titans money line hitting and the Giants money line hitting in that fashion. So I mean that's why they play the games, right? That's what they look for. But no, excited to talk some futures with you because last night definitely shapes up the market a little bit. It shakes it up a lot, actually.
Yeah, it definitely does. And there's a lot to discuss with that market. And I think that last night with the Dolphins, they went from trailing, then suddenly 5 seconds later, they're covering 13.5. And then they lose the game outright in regulation. To do that was bananas. They get the Jets this week. That line for the Jets-Dolphins game moved 4 points from look ahead, from what it was. Not the look ahead, but from where it was on Monday morning. Went from 12.5 to 8.5. And honestly, I get it. I think that's a bit of an overreaction if Tyreek Hill is able to go next week, but still, it's very interesting to see how much of a reaction there was in the market to that game. That game is thankfully for me not involved with the recommendations I'll have later on, because I don't know how to read this Dolphins team right now. We're going to talk about the teams that are more in the fringes of the AFC playoff picture. We're going to talk Bengals, kind of see if Jake Browning can keep this thing going. Then we'll talk about the other AFC playoff contenders who are all right now plus money and decide which ones may be the best bets right now to advance to the postseason. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. We're here every weekday breaking down the NFL. We'll get some NBA, NHL talk on the show for tomorrow as well. Full NFL Week 15 preview coming up Thursday. And of course, NFL player props and some EPL coming your way Friday. To get all that as it is posted, make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find us on the FanDuel YouTube page and over on FanDuel TV Plus. Let's begin things, Ryan, by talking about those Bengals. Right now, they are plus 310 to make the playoffs at FanDuel Sportsbook. And I get it. Jake Browning has looked really good recently, and that's been fun to see Zach Taylor game plan around a backup quarterback. But it's also, Ryan, just a 2-game sample. Have you seen enough in that sample to consider buying the Bengals at that number, or is the market valuing the Bengals properly right now?
I think both. I think they're valuing them properly, but I do think that there's merit here when you're looking at the way, Lou Anarumo runs the defense as well, too. If Jake Browning can keep on this pace, I mean, this is kind of what we're seeing already, Jim, with just, backup quarterbacks in these positions to, get teams into the playoffs. I mean, we're seeing it with Cleveland. Houston's going to have their chance at this, like the Colts being in the mix with Gardner Minshew. I mean, the list goes on and on with just these backup quarterbacks who have come in. I mean, the Steelers with Trubisky, like it's just crazy. And Jake Browning has definitely looked the part, I guess, of being able to come in and fill in admirably. And part of that is the skill position weapons around him. You know, if they can, get Mixon going. They got this Chase Brown kid who's coming into his own. T. Higgins is back healthy. We'll see. It's like a revolving door over there. T. Higgins comes back. Tyler Boyd's now on the injury report. But I think it is interesting when you look at their schedule here. They're facing the Minnesota Vikings team who just, again, backup quarterback. They can't get it right. Josh Dobbs getting benched in the game, so I guess that magic is over. Then you got at Pittsburgh, at Kansas City, and Cleveland home to end it out. I mean, these are some games. These are some tough matchups, but I do feel like they are in the driver's seat to be able to bring it home. Starting with these. You handle business at home against Minnesota, then you take care of Pittsburgh, who's been reeling, and I think you kind of you can have that loss against Kansas City at on the road and still be in a good position.
Yeah, plus 310 right now, the number for the Bengals to make the playoffs. They are minus 420 to miss, and I think that part of the reason why you could potentially have some faith here is it's honestly not just a 2-game sample, because Browning came in the middle of that Ravens game. That's where Burrow hurt his wrist initially. And then he played against the Steelers, against the Jags, and against the Colts. And I have numbers on how a team does on early downs through the air and on the ground, but I care more about through the air. And it looks at what they do relative to expectations. So basically like a plus minus compared to expectations based on the matchup. They've actually exceeded expectations through the air in all 4 games since the Burrow wrist injury occurred. They did it against the Ravens and the Steelers. They didn't put up a lot of points in those games, but they did exceed expectations. Now, the issue they had was if it gets to 3rd down, they're in pretty deep doo-doo because they've struggled there quite a bit. But the early down stuff is good, and it's also way better than it was earlier on this year when Burrow was playing through that calf injury. Like, they were awful those first 4 games in this metric. So I'm still hesitant because I think that you mentioned the Chiefs game. I still think the Chiefs are pretty feisty. The Steelers make every game disgusting. So that game's kind of gross. The Vikings defense is playing pretty well. I'm still skeptical of the Bengals defense. So I'm not sure if I can quite get to plus 310, but I wouldn't be shocked at the offensive stuff, maybe not being what it has been, but at least well exceeding expectations. That part, Ryan, wouldn't shock me if it does wind up sticking at least a bit.
Yeah, I think, and it just, three teams make the wild card right now. So we get that 7th team. And when we're looking more in the wild card picture right now, I just keep going back to it, Jim. We've talked about it for weeks now, and Cleveland keeps proving me wrong. But these 3 teams, I just am not convinced that they'll be there at the end of the day. And I know we'll talk about the rest of the AFC picture there, but these are all arguably better than the 3 teams who are in the picture right now. Or the 4 teams, I should say, who are at 7 and 6. I mean, Houston, Denver, Cincinnati, Buffalo. The only one I'm really not certain about is Cincinnati, and they've kind of hit their stride. So it's Pittsburgh, Indy, and Cleveland definitely have their work cut out for them, and I'm excited to see how this plays out.
So let's talk about those other contenders you alluded to right there, because right now we have 4 other teams that are between even money and plus 210 to make the playoffs at FanDuel Sportsbook, led by the Bills, actually down to even money. They were plus 110, I believe, yesterday, now bet down to even money. There was some movement in the money line in that game against Dallas, which may help explain why this occurred. Broncos are plus 142, Texans plus 116, Colts plus 116, and Steelers plus 210. They're all bunched together, Ryan. So which of those teams do you think is the best bet relative to their FanDuel Sportsbook odds to make the playoffs right now?
Well, I mean, okay, so the best bet I feel like right now to make the playoffs based on their odds are the Denver Broncos, especially if they're able to handle business this week against the Lions. Now they are, I believe, 5 or 5.5 point dogs in this matchup. Is in Detroit. So I think the one thing that not bank on, but I think the one thing that kind of excites us about this is that we should see points scored and, have Russell Wilson get going with that crew. Detroit, this is needs this win badly to have themselves feel good about where they sit in the playoff picture. They're going to be, climbing an uphill battle. But after Detroit, been looking at New England Chargers at home and then Vegas on the road for Denver to close it out. I mean, what better way to, wrap up your season than with a schedule like that? And they've been on fire, whatever it is, 7 out of their last 8 games, I believe, that they've won, with the only loss to Houston, which was a respectable one. So I think that their odds are definitely incredible. The Bills are also interesting, like at plus, they're plus money to make the playoffs right now, and they're favored this week against the Cowboys. Like, I get it's in Buffalo. I had to double check this because I was like, what is happening here? Like,
that's also that's one of the recommendations I have later, Ryan, is the Cowboys money line. So we're on the same page there, believe me.
Well, and it's like, Jim, how many times have I talked about the Bills on this show? Like, I think everybody thinks that I have stake, in the Buffalo Bills with how, and, I do have some futures in them. So I do feel great, if they're able to win this game against Dallas and kind of, get into the mix here for playoffs. But it just really is mind boggling to me that, like, the Cowboys have kind of been the cream of the crop of the NFC as of late. And this is a team that, like, has really struggled, and then they beat a struggling Chiefs team, and we're going to favor them. I don't understand that. If the Bills are able to win this, then they do get a similar schedule like the Broncos. They get the Chargers on the road, New England at home, and then they end with Miami, a team that, is a playoff team, but they've been able to take care of business against the Dolphins in Josh Allen and Sean McDermott's career. So, yeah, I do think that there's some merit there, but I do tend to like the Bills money line, or I'm sorry, the Broncos money line just a little bit better, not only with their schedule, but just because of what shapes up for them in week 15.
Yeah, and I think with the Broncos, you could also view this as asking yourself how you view them this week against the Lions. If you think that they're undervalued against the Lions, then bet them now to make the playoffs at plus 142, because if they win that game, then they're going to be in great shape, and they're going to have much shorter odds at that point. If you think that the Lions are in good spot to win that game, you agree with the market that the line should be favored, then wait a week and kind of see where things settle out for them after that, because you can probably get a better number at that point. So if you agree with the market that the Lions are decently heavily favored in that game, then hold off. But if you disagree and think it's a situation where, maybe you're more on the Broncos side, think that the market's valuing them, plus 142 is a good number. Now with the Texans, I've been high on them all year. I finally placed my first bet against them this week, which was very sad to pull that trigger and bet against my guys. But with Stroud and concussion protocol, they're on the road taking on Tennessee. And I don't think that Davis Mills is well positioned to win that game. So that's pretty tough if we assume that Stroud misses. And then they've got Cleveland at home the following week, and then Tennessee and at Indy. I had thought that this road for the Texans was pretty easy, and that was why I was on their playoff odds earlier on. Now I'm more skeptical, because it's not only just CJ Stroud likely to miss this week, which does put pretty big dent in their odds to win. It's also that Cleveland's a tough out now with Flacco playing decently okay. Tennessee again, it's a repeat matchup there. I think they can win that one for sure, but then they go on the road to face Indy, and Indy might be playing for a playoff spot as well. So I like the Texans earlier. I'm out for right now. I wouldn't be shocked if I bet them in like individual games once Stroud is healthy, even with Tank Dell being gone. But I think at least for right now, I'm okay taking the foot off the gas on my beloved Texans for the moment. Now, Ryan, let's take a look elsewhere and talk about other teams that got a boost for you across week 14. Which teams we have not discussed yet got a boost up or down for you based on what you saw this past week?
Yeah, well, I think the teams if we're talking, I mean, boost up, like let's talk about the Bills, I guess. I mean, hey, if they're, going to be hitting their stride and, taking care of business against Arrowhead with the Chiefs, still up at the top to be favored in the Super Bowl as far as AFC teams go, then yeah, I guess we got to give the Bills their flowers. Maybe, I don't know. I'm still skeptical about what Week 15 holds for them in the future, but one game at a time, and that's definitely what you want to see. Is people were not expecting them to go into Arrowhead and be able to handle business. The Jaguars are kind of that middling team for me. You love to see Trevor Lawrence come back and kind of battle it out there for this team as they kind of go as he goes. And they got a great matchup this week on primetime Sunday Night Football against the Ravens, at home. And, this is one of those games too for me where the Ravens, they got to come out and show something. Like, they have such a great path to be the number one seed in the AFC right now, that like, this is where I need them to come out and handle business. It's been tough sledding for them over the past 2 years with Lamar being hurt and, I think not even able to finish out games in December come recent years. And, I think that their window is it's opened, all the with how the Giants have been playing. So really need to see something from the Ravens this week. As far as stock down goes, I think the Green Bay Packers last night, not able to handle business against the Giants is definitely a tough look. I think that the magic for them is kind of running out, but it like Christian and Aaron Jones aren't there, from an offensive standpoint. They're just a very young team, and that definitely shows. Still plus money for them to make the playoffs, and they still have like a decent road to be able to get in there. The Vikings, winning that 3-0 game definitely hurt them because now they have to play catch up, and they will have to play I believe they have to play the Vikings again this season. So that's definitely a stock down one that I was looking at. And yeah, I mean, I think, some of these other, like in the NFC, the NFC picture, Jim, is just absolutely brutal. I can't trust Seattle. Like, I have no idea what's going on in NFC South. I've talked about that week over week. Like, I mean, the Falcons and Buccaneers and Saints just all belong with each other with how they're playing. So, still some, like, the Giants and Bears are still mathematically in it. Like, that's just how crazy it is with 5-8 record at week 15, still being able to make the playoffs. So, I guess the Vikings would be one too. Like, I don't see an outlook for them looking good if they can't figure out the quarterback position, sitting at 7-6. But Justin Jefferson being banged up, not being able to come back, like, they're going to have some tough sledding to make the playoffs.
Bears are plus 1260, Ryan. You still got a chance. You never know. Could happen. They're facing the Browns this week. It's a 3-point spread. It's pretty tight. It's not over yet.
It's definitely not over, Jim. It's a crazy thing happening in that NFC picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Any other futures you're eyeing entering week number 15, Ryan?
Yeah, I think this is kind of where, the win totals is where I'm going to live this week. Just with how things played out, it really just shook up the picture and not in a fun way. I am looking at the Cowboys just at 850 to win the Super Bowl now. You're looking at them kind of being, taking care of business against Philly in great fashion. And sitting at 850 there, like right under the Dolphins, I think that's a little bit wrong. I would expect to see them a little bit higher at this point. They're definitely going to want to play for that one seed, but again, I don't know if they'll catch Philly or San Fran with the way that they're playing. But still makes it interesting there. Not a team that we've been able to trust and play one that we. So, and Jim, I'm not going to talk about them because they're not in the playoffs, but like Brandon Taylor, what is going on are the Chargers. We talked about them a couple times, year over year, and I just really am just depressed when I look at the Chargers and think about what their outlook is and their future is. And Herbert hasn't been able to get going. Austin Eckler is probably an afterthought now in that offense, and it looks like they got the wide receiver wrong when 4 were picked in a row, and they probably made the wrong pick there with Quentin Johnson. So I digress.
It's sad, man. It's tough to see the Chargers where they're at. That Thursday night game totals 33.5. But Ryan, I did in fact take the over once again. What could possibly go wrong for that Thursday night game to the Chargers and the Raiders? Aiden O'Connell gets Easton Stick. You gotta love that. That is Ryan Williams. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Ryan will be back with us once again next week to preview a much better game on Monday night than the Eagles and the Seahawks. Ryan, looking forward to that. Have a fantastic week. Until then, we'll talk to you once again Monday.
Yeah, enjoy week 15, Jim. We'll see you next time.
Alrighty, that is Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Excited to get Ryan back on the show once again and next week. We're going to dig into week 15, outline some spots where my models show value over at FanDuel Sportsbook in the money lines, spreads, and totals in just 1 second. But first, score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There is a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, totals, and more. So visit FanDuel and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame moneyline wager required. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text OPEN-Y in New York. Let's dig in now to week number 15 and outline where my models show value at FanDuel Sportsbook for this week. Let's begin things with one of those Saturday games between the Steelers and the Colts right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Colts are favored by 2.5, -115 on their side of things, and I do show value on that number, laying the 2.5 with the Colts. And a lot of this is because of the Steelers' injuries, where it's a pretty big downgrade for them, both on offense and on defense. Kenny Pickett is likely still out following his tightrope surgery. Tough to come back from that in 2 weeks. So he's likely out. And now TJ Watt is in concussion protocol. Watt does have 9 days to clear. And we've seen more players recently clear concussion protocol in less than a week than we had for a very long time previously. So that rate has gone up. But I don't think that'll be true with Watt, given he had symptoms when he came in Friday. I think that probably pushes back his timeline and makes it less likely Watt is able to go in this game. Even if I assume Watt is in, like if I keep this Steelers defense stagnant, my numbers do show value on the Colts here. They sputtered badly against the Bengals thanks to a very poor defensive showing, and they're a bad defense, so that makes a lot of sense. But that won't be as big of a concern against the Steelers as it would have been against that Bengals offense. We know the Colts' limitations. Gardner Minshew's a low upside quarterback. Their defense is pretty bad, but we also know the Steelers too, especially with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. I thought Trubisky was a pretty lateral move from Pickett, and I was probably wrong. So I did downgrade them a bit more than I did entering week 14, based on the backup quarterback being in there. If we do see Watt get ruled out, I'd expect this to move to 3. And my model has it decently clear of that as well. So even at -115 on the Colts here at -2.5, I do like the Colts in this spot. So first bet for me on that Saturday game is the Colts -2.5, -115 as they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Other bets for me are scattered across Sunday and Monday. Let's begin things by talking about a team that's in the NFC playoff race right now in the Los Angeles Rams. They did not get the win on Sunday against the Ravens. Came close, but couldn't quite get there. On Sunday, they're taking on the Commanders. They are 6.5-point favorites at -110, and I am okay laying the 6.5 here with the Rams, in large part because their offense has been cooking recently. It's not just that Baltimore game where they put up 31 points in regulation. They also played well against Cleveland, who has, I think, the best defense in football. Now they're facing the Commanders. Very much not the best defense in football. In fact, since the Montez Sweat and Chase Young trades, you could argue they've been the worst defense in football. They are coming off a bye, and that does get them a 0.6-point bump for me in my model, but that's not enough to bridge the gap here. I think the 6.5 is honestly pretty light. Thanks to the past couple of weeks of the Rams offense, they're now to 12th in my overall power rankings. Commanders 29th before downgrading them for the departures of Sweat and Young. My model has this spread closer to double digits than it does a touchdown, so I'm fine laying the 6.5 in this spot. I think the Rams offense is well exceeding expectations. Cooper Kupp looked a lot better Sunday, still limited for sure, but better than he had before, and they've got Puka Nacua. Demarcus Robinson is popping up for them. Kyron Williams make this offense more dynamic. So the Rams go from facing the Browns and Ravens to facing the Commanders. I think they're going to put up a lot of points here. So totally okay laying the 6.5 with the Rams and betting on the favorites here as they try to march closer to the NFC playoff race. The final money line or spread for me is one I alluded to in talking to you, Ryan. That is the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Buffalo Bills. Right now, the Cowboys money line is +116 at FanDuel Sportsbook, and I do show value there. This was a bit of a surprise to me because my model has been on the Bills quite a bit recently. It's shown a lot of value on them. I was on them for that Chiefs game for their money line of +118 there. Got the win in that one, thanks to some help from Kadarius Toney. But now they go back home and they face the Cowboys. And I think this number kind of undersells the Cowboys at least a bit. If you look at the Cowboys overall, so including early part of the year where they had some weird games and some struggles, the Cowboys are now second in my model's power rankings behind just the 49ers. The Bills are fifth, so still a very good team there, but there is a decent tier gap between the two of the teams, thanks in large part to the Cowboys defense playing a lot better. And I've got some injuries on defense, especially against the run, and the Bills offense has been very efficient on the ground, which could be a concern in this game. Other concern is it is a road game outdoors for a dome team in December, and the Cowboys offense has been much more efficient at home than they have been on the road. Now, part of that, though, is the way their games have broken down. Their offense has been a lot better since their bye week, but since their bye, they've played just 2 games on the road. If you look at those 2 games on the road, one was against the Eagles, and they probably should have won that game in Philly. Scored just 23 points, but pretty bad efficiency inside the red zone. So that was a bit fluky. And then the other game was against the Panthers, and they cruised pretty easily in that game. So they've been better on the road since the bye than they were before the bye. Now they face the Bills. Bills defense is super banged up. I thought the Chiefs moved the ball pretty effectively against them on Sunday. The Chiefs' successor is very high in that game, so wasn't a boost up for the Bills defense, despite the fact they led up to 17 points in that game. When you blend together the Cowboys being on the road with what they've done overall, and everything with the Bills going on there, I do make the Cowboys slight favorites here. So getting +116 on their money line is pretty enticing. And you could say, hey, the Bills have higher motivation here, trying to make the playoffs. The Cowboys, if they win this game, have a much clearer path to winning the NFC East, especially with the Seahawks in a somewhat tough game on Monday Night Football. So I actually do like the Cowboys here, +116. Fine with going there. I do get a bit nervous because of the home road splits for the Cowboys, but I think those are accounted for in the market right now. So I'll take the Cowboys at +116 to win the game outright. And that just shifted while we were talking to +114. So still like it at +114. As mentioned, I do show value in the Cowboys money, or the Cowboys as being the favorites in this game, a very slight favorite. So even at +114, if you can't get the +116 anymore, I do feel okay with the Cowboys, the joy of doing these podcasts live on air. Final one for me is going to be in the Monday Night Football game between the Seahawks and the Eagles. Total in this game is 48. Under is -110. And honestly, pretty shocked the total is as high as it is right now, considering that there's a shot we see Drew Lock once again this game. I think that it's helpful to look back at last week's markets for 49ers and Seahawks to kind of get a read on the impact of Drew Lock here. And it may be Geno Smith. It sounds like it was a 1 to 2 week injury, so maybe he does wind up playing. And Lock, I thought, played okay in that game against the 49ers as well. So let's take a look at the markets in that game. It was 46.5 when it was Geno Smith. By the time Smith is officially ruled out, the total in that one went down to 44.5. So that was kind of what they thought about the Seahawks matchup on the road against the 49ers. But that game featured a much larger spread. The 49ers closed, I think it's like 16.5 in some spots. They were 13.5 when it was like halfway between Geno and Lock. That was an overreaction, but a larger spread correlates to a higher total, and that one is still at 44.5. This time, with Geno maybe 40% to play, somewhere in there, the total is 48. So it's a much higher total, and the spread is tighter with the Eagles favored by 3.5 right now, -115 on that 3.5. But I guess I'm a bit surprised to see the way this is come together, where that one closed at 44.5 for the Seahawks and the 49ers. There's a shot we see Drew Lock once again. The spread is now tighter, but the total goes up to 48. I get it, because this is two decently fast-paced offenses. Both offenses can put up points, but and neither defense is very good either. So I understand why it's 48. I just disagree with them. My model has the total here at 44.4. It's about average, bit above average in terms of like overall offensive expectations. Wind is not a huge factor here. I think it's about 4 miles per hour on Monday. Chance of rain, but not a huge factor there. So I think under 48, the pretty strong play here between the Seahawks and the Eagles. Again, surprised to see this number as high as it is, but I'm fine taking that. So I'll take the Seahawks, Eagles under 48. Even if Geno does wind up playing, I feel okay with this one. It's based on the way the rest of the matchup sets up. So recommendations for me this week are the Seahawks, Eagles under 48 at -110. Got the Cowboys money line against the Bills at +116. I like the Rams -6.5, -110 against the Commanders, and the Colts -2.5, -115 as they take on the Steelers. Got to go back through recommendations from last week here on the show across all of last week's shows, beginning with Dr. Ed Feng. We had him on Thursday to break down the NFL in week number 14. Tough luck here for Ed, because we talked on Thursday. Geno Smith injured his groin on Thursday after the show, and Ed's favorite bet was Seahawks +10.5 taking on the 49ers, and they almost covered the 10.5 even with Drew Lock. Was a 12-point game when all was said and done. So tough luck there for Ed. I'm not really sure how that game would have broken down had Geno played, because again, Lock did play decently well, but tough luck there for Ed on the Seahawks +10.5 with Geno being ruled out. Probably a decently competitive game if Geno is in that one. So check out Ed on Twitter at @ThePowerRank and find his work at thepowerrank.com. Our guest on Friday to break down NFL player props was Tom Vecchio. Check him out on Twitter at Tom_Vecchio1. Tom went 3-1 for the week. For his recommendations here on the show. He had Patrick Mahomes over 261.5 passing yards in their game against the Bills. Thought process there, no Isaiah Pacheco. Should throw more, and they did, because Mahomes finished with 271 there. The one loss for Tom was Lamar Jackson under 197.5 passing yards at -114. Lamar played really well in this game. He peppered he had really efficient looks to Isaiah Likely, Odell Beckham, and Zay Flowers. So Lamar finished 316, but loss is a loss regardless of how far it goes over. So it is a loss either way, but the other ones were hits for Tom. He had Kyren Williams in that game, over 16.5 rushing attempts, and the Rams really did try to pound this one here. Williams had 25 rush attempts, so well over at -114. I think that would have been a win even before overtime with Williams. Final one was Jahmyr Gibbs to score a touchdown at +150. Gibbs did score pretty early against the Bears. The Lions didn't do a ton, but hey, Gibbs got the touchdown there. So a 3-1 week for Tom. Again, check him out on Twitter at Tom_Vecchio1. You'll have a preview of Chargers and Raiders on the podcast feed on Thursday via Primetime Tom, and also over on FanDuel TV Plus. Mentioned this before, but Ryan Williams did well last night for the 2 Monday Night Football games. Find Ryan on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. He had the under for Titans Dolphins at 46.5 minus 110. That was a loss because saw the Titans put up a lot of points there, but the rest did go pretty well. He had Raheem Mostert to get 50-plus rushing yards at plus 108. Mostert had 96. Looked really good in that game. Couple of short touchdowns, so good call by Ryan there. Ryan had Tyreek Hill over 7.5 receptions at plus 106. Obviously, Hill in and out of that game with that ankle injury. Finished with just 4 receptions, so no win there. Ryan did have DeAndre Hopkins over 54.5 receiving yards, minus 113. Also talked about alternate markets for Hopkins, given the deep balls from Will Levis, and Hopkins finished with 124. So well over that number. Hopefully you did dig into the alt markets for Hopkins, because most of those would have hit as well. In the Giants and Packers game, Ryan said he had a lean toward the Giants plus 6 and over 37, and both those did win. So leans there for Ryan, but pretty emphatic wins for him, as we saw a lot of points in that game relative to expectation. We did see the Giants come through with the win outright, so good call by Ryan there. The Giants got the win despite the fact that Jaden Reed did score. Ryan liked him for an anytime touchdown, 2-1, and Reed got a red zone rush attempt, as we had discussed on the show. A lot of rushing attempts, actually, for Jaden Reed. So he does cash at 2-1 for anytime touchdown. Ryan had Saquon Barkley over 69.5 rushing yards. That was a win there pretty easily. Had Saquon over 3.5 receptions at plus 108, and he finished with 3. So a loss there. Also a loss in Jalen Hyatt for anytime touchdown at plus 550, and a loss for Jordan Love over 225.5 passing yards at 218. But then did get hit with Wan'Dale Robinson to have 4+ receptions at plus 144 for a win there. So 7-5 in the night for Ryan. Wins at plus 200, plus 144, and plus 108 as well. So good calls by Ryan on those. Find Ryan on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Our EPL guest last week was Austin Cass. Check him out on Twitter at Austin Cass. Find his work over at FanDuel Research. He had Luton Town total goals under 0.5, so basically to get shut out, at minus 130 in the game against Man City. I had to think there for a second. Man City? Yeah, I think. Anyway, they let up a goal in stoppage, or they scored a goal in stoppage time in the first half. So they did get over 0.5 goals. Did lose the game eventually, but no win there on that one. Austin liked the Tottenham money line at plus 110, and they cruised to a win there. They won that game 4-1. So good call by Austin on that one. Final one was Kaoru Matoma to score or assist at minus 105. Matoma did not start that game, but did sub in later on. So the bets did stand for most house rules. And got subbed on late. Actually did help create a couple of chances and had a near goal, but couldn't quite get across the line there. So no win there. 1-2 week for Austin. Hopefully you waited until Matoma was announced not being in. Maybe you didn't bet that one as a result, but either way, 1-2 week for Austin. We'll get him back here on Friday. As he did go 4-0 the previous week. We'll get back on track on Friday. Find Austin on Twitter at Austin Cass. Finally, for me, slim profit this week. 4 recommendations, 2-2, but one of the wins was the Bills money line at plus 118 as they took on the Chiefs. Again, thank you, Kadarius Toney. Appreciate it as always. Got the win there and got the win on the Browns minus 1.5, minus 110, taking on the Jags. Did close right there once again, once Lawrence was announced as in. So felt pretty good about the recommendation, where it was like, okay, Lawrence may play, but I do still like the baddie if he does go. And the Browns won by 4, despite trying to blow that game later on. So those were the 2 wins. 2 losses were Bengals, Colts under 42.5. They went well over that. I think it was 48 was the final score there. So, and the market moved against me. The wind speeds went up throughout the week, or down throughout the week. So not the best process, not the best results either. And that one, a deserved loss. Didn't feel as deserving of a loss for the 49ers Seahawks. That game, I had the over at 46.5. Felt like that should have been in a pretty good spot had Geno Smith played. And honestly, I felt pretty good about it throughout the first half, but Seahawks in the second half couldn't maintain the magic. So I think 44 total points scored in that one. So under hits and a loss from me, but 2-2 overall with a win at plus 118. So slight profit if you had even units across all 4 of those recommendations. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread, but we are back with you once again tomorrow. We're going to get some non-football thoughts here on the show. We're talking some basketball and talking some hockey on the show tomorrow. Big thank you once again to our guest, Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonnes. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Sonnes, and you can find FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with whatever you're betting across this Tuesday. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to talk about some hoops and some hockey. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.